Howdy! Today I'm going to be presenting about ethanol for the Biofuels project. A little bit of background about ethanol. It's a renewable energy source made from corn, and it's pretty widespread in its use. 98% of U.S. gasoline contains ethanol. It was first used as a biofuel in 1826, and it fueled Henry Ford's Model T in 1908. It was in high demand during World War II because of fuel shortages, and it is the modern day ethanol industry started in the 1970s as a result of increasing petroleum-based gasoline prices and an increasing concern for the environment. So ethanol production can be classified into either starch and sugar-based or cellulosic. So starch and sugar-based ethanol production can be done either in dry mills or wet mills. In dry mills, corn is ground into flour and then it's fermented into ethanol, while in wet mills, the corn starch, fiber, and protein are separated, and then the starch is fermented into ethanol. In cellulosic, there are two different processes. You can either have a biochemical or a thermochemical process. So in the biochemical, you start with a pretreatment to release sugar, then you have hydrolysis to break the cellulose into sugar, and then the sugar is fermented into ethanol. The thermochemical, heat and chemicals are added to feedstock to make syngas, and then a catalyst is added to syngas to create ethanol. And the feedstock is mostly corn. So this is all made and using corn grown in the U.S. Most corn in the world is grown in the U.S. 40% of U.S. corn is used for ethanol, with the majority of it coming from the Midwest. The total land used to grow corn is about the size of the state of California, and each acre of corn creates about 150 bushels, and each bushel makes about 2.8 gallons of ethanol. So ethanol is pretty common, it's pretty commonly used. It makes up 65% of biofuels produced. And most people have been pretty familiar with it since it's been around for a long time, and 98% of U.S. gasoline contains it. There isn't really much of an effort to communicate about it with the public because it's pretty common, especially since in 2005, a federal law was passed mandating mixing 15 billion gallons of ethanol into U.S. gasoline supply annually. So ethanol, there is a pretty big debate on whether or not it's climate friendly. So it started being used because it was thought to be more climate friendly than what they were using before. But increasingly, like recently, there's been an increasing amount of people agreeing that it's not very climate friendly. They've done reports, and they found that 24% it releases 24% more carbon emissions than gasoline. There was a study done by the USDA in 2016 that found it to be very environmentally friendly and released less carbon emissions than gasoline, but that study didn't really account for land conversion and how land is like how just the corn growing process, how that affects carbon emissions. So more recent studies have been coming out, and they've been taking that into account, and they've been giving more accurate numbers. So corn and ethanol because makes corn into a very lucrative industry, and it's a significant part of the U.S. economy and really helps support rural areas. It has created about 17,000 jobs, not 17 yeah, not that number. It's 17,000, and it contributes to $57 billion to the U.S. GDP and $34.8 billion to the U.S. household income, and it helps support agriculture and farm economies. So, because of this, because of what I talked about earlier with the with how it's not the best for the environment, but it is still very important for local economies. I suggest that there should be research done to analyze the cost to the economy if they were to stop using corn-based ethanol, and how that would affect rural communities, and if that's worth being more environmentally friendly. And a plan I would have for action is to do that research, and then I would support research into alternative methods if it turns out that it might be okay to do that, those rural economies might be able to support themselves or find new industries to do, or maybe alternatives could be made where those create even more jobs than before, and then to implement alternatives if they end up working. Some current alternatives are very interesting is that recently in Stanford, they found a more environmentally friendly method using copper, water, and carbon dioxide. So they have a reaction with carbon and water, and they deliver electricity through a copper catalyst, and that creates ethanol at room temperature, and it's a lot more environmentally friendly, and it's cheaper too, which is really nice.